Some truths don't shatter like glass. They cut slow, deep, quiet. Like the moment you realize the woman you built your life around isn't looking at you anymore. She's already watching someone else. Welcome back to Wives Gone Wild. Thanks for being here. Where are you joining us from? We love seeing where these wild tales land. Let's get started. I'm Mason, and I thought loyalty was my strength. Until she laughed in my face and told me to leave like I never mattered. It happened fast. 17 years of marriage, wiped clean in under 10 minutes. 1 minute, I was unlocking the door to the house I built. The next, I was standing in the entryway like an intruder, staring at a woman I barely recognized. Clarissa stood by the kitchen, wine glass in hand, lips curled into a smirk that made my stomach knot. "No divorce papers needed," she said, raising her voice just enough to echo. "Just leave." Just like that. And right beside her, barefoot on the hardwood I laid plank by plank, was her new boyfriend, Reed. His grin was pure smug, like he'd just won a prize he didn't deserve. He kicked off his boots, tracking mud across the rug. Then, with zero hesitation, he dropped himself onto my couch and propped his filthy feet on the coffee table I built from oak. The one I made for our 10th anniversary. I looked at the scuffs his heels left in the finish. I didn't say a word. Not because I didn't feel it, but because I knew I'd explode if I did. Clarissa didn't even flinch. She laughed again, like I was background noise. Like 17 years of memories were just clutter in her new life. The air in the house felt heavy. Her perfume still clung to the stairs, jasmine and something too sweet, but it was layered now with cologne I didn't recognize. I walked upstairs, slow and silent. Our bedroom. No, her bedroom now, looked untouched, but it felt foreign, cold. I opened the closet, grabbed the old suitcase with the busted zipper, and started packing. Shirts first, then pants, then socks, folded with mechanical precision. I wasn't rushing. I wasn't stalling either. I just needed something to do with my hands, so I wouldn't break anything on the way out. Downstairs, I could hear them laughing again, his voice loud and arrogant, like he already owned the place. "Nice house," he said. "Could use some updating though." I pressed my teeth together hard enough to taste blood. When I zipped the bag and walked down with it, Clarissa didn't even glance up. She was swirling wine like this was just another Tuesday. Reed was flipping through channels on my TV like it had always been his. At the door, I paused, my hand on the knob, eyes scanning the room. Photos on the wall. Beach trips. Weddings. Birthdays. Smiles. 17 years of a life we built together, and she torched it in one night for a guy who didn't even take off his muddy shoes. I could have asked why. I could have shouted, made a scene, but she'd already chosen. This wasn't a negotiation. So I opened the door, stepped into the cool night air. The crickets were loud, and for a moment, the silence between them felt louder. My truck sat at the curb like a loyal dog. I tossed the suitcase into the back, climbed in, and started the engine. It sputtered like always, then caught. I didn't look back. She thought she'd won, that she'd kick me out and close the book, but she didn't know who I really was. And this wasn't the end. It was the trigger. The air was crisp, but inside me, something had gone quiet, cold, steady. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done playing the part she gave me. The house was behind me, fading into the dark. And with every mile, I shed the version of myself that Clarissa thought she'd tossed aside. I pulled into an old gas station a few towns over. The kind with flickering lights, a dented ice machine, and a soda vending machine that hadn't worked in years. I parked under the canopy, engine idling as the neon buzzed above my windshield. Inside my jacket pocket, my phone felt heavier than usual. I pulled it out and opened my contacts. My fingers scrolled down to a name not labeled by an actual name. Just one word, command. 17 years. That's how long I'd kept the lie running. And tonight, she made it easier than I ever expected. I typed the message with no hesitation. Initiate. Subject confirmed. Proceeding as planned. I hit send. A pause. Then, the reply lit up the screen like a flare in the dark. All teams ready. Phase 1 begins 0900. I leaned back in my seat, staring through the dusty windshield as the words sunk in. The rumble of passing trucks on the highway sounded distant now, muffled by the quiet storm building in my head. She thought she'd kick me out of my life. But the truth? She just stepped into mine. Clarissa never knew what I really did, who I really was. She didn't ask. Never questioned the locked drawer in my office. The late nights. The quiet bruises I brushed off with lazy excuses. She didn't want the truth. She wanted simple, and I gave it to her. Right up until tonight. I started the truck again, the engine grumbling like an old friend waking up for one more ride. The wheels crunched gravel as I pulled back onto the road, heading toward the city. The sky was a black sheet stretched over the world, broken only by the headlights streaking past. I tightened my grip on the wheel. My mind wasn't racing, it was clear. The mask I'd worn for 17 years had cracked clean down the middle, and behind it, there wasn't just a husband. There was an operative, a strategist, a man who'd built something she couldn't even begin to understand. She thought she'd ended something. What she didn't know was, I'd just started everything. This wasn't about revenge. Not really. This was the mission. And Reed, he was never just her boyfriend. He was the mark I'd been waiting to bring down. And now, she'd served him to me on a silver platter. Tomorrow, when the door knocks and the badge flashes, Clarissa's smile will vanish. And only then will she realize. She never knew me at all. The road out of town stretched long and empty, broken only by the occasional glow of passing headlights. I didn't play music, didn't need distraction. The hum of the engine and the rhythm of tires on pavement were enough to keep my thoughts sharp. Clarissa's voice echoed in the back of my mind, mocking, cold, careless. No divorce papers needed. Just leave. She really believed that was the end of me. I turned off the main highway and followed a narrow, winding road through the trees. The further I drove, the darker the world became, like I was slipping beneath the surface of something deeper. Older. After about an hour, I pulled up to a dirt path that looked like it hadn't seen a vehicle in weeks. My tires crunched over gravel and dead leaves as I eased toward a small wooden cabin half swallowed by the woods. The Bureau called this place a black safe. Off-grid, unlisted, built for agents like me who needed to disappear or reappear as something else. To the world, it was a forgotten shack. To me, it was a reset button. The porch creaked under my boots. The door stuck for a moment before giving way with a groan. Inside, the air was stale, thick with the smell of dust, dry wood, and disuse. No photos. No furniture beyond the basics. Just a couch, a scratched-up table, and a floor lamp with a dying bulb that flickered like it was nervous. I dropped my suitcase by the door and did a quick sweep. Old habits. Checked the corners, the windows, the signal strength on my phone. Full bars. Good. It was just past midnight. 9 hours until phase 1. I opened the mini fridge in the corner and found a can of soda buried behind a packet of expired mustard. I cracked it open and let the fizz bite my throat. The cold helped anchor me, kept the adrenaline from slipping into restlessness. I sat on the couch, the cushions stiff and cold beneath me, and let my head fall back against the wall. The wood creaked faintly above me, and the chirping of crickets outside filled the silence like white noise. This wasn't how I thought 45 would look. Alone in a cabin, marriage in ruins, preparing to take down a criminal I'd been tracking for years. But maybe this quiet, this cold clarity, was what I'd needed all along. Clarissa never asked questions, never wondered why I came home bruised or why I locked my office drawer like it held state secrets. She didn't want to know, didn't want complicated. She wanted predictable, simple, boring. So I gave her what she wanted, even as I disappeared more and more behind the mask. But there was one thing she never asked about, and that was Reed. I stood, walked over to the table, and pulled a worn leather notebook from my suitcase. Flipping through the pages, I landed on the one marked RV. Reed Vallon. I'd been watching him long before Clarissa ever brought him home, before she called him her soulmate. I tapped his initials on the page with one steady finger, the quiet inside me sharp as a scalpel. She didn't just betray me. She handed me everything I needed. She thought I was walking away from her, but I was walking toward something else. The truth. By the time the sun started bleeding through the blinds, I'd slept maybe 2 hours. The couch was stiff, the room cold, but it wasn't the discomfort that kept me awake. It was the twist of irony sitting in my chest like a loaded gun. Clarissa hadn't just thrown me out. She'd given me the green light. She had no idea that her new boyfriend, her smug, muddy-booted soulmate, was the man I'd spent the last 3 years tracking across state lines and through shell corporations. Reed Vallon, a hedge fund golden boy on paper. Designer suits, champagne smiles, yachts, parties. But underneath the polished surface, he was dirty, real dirty. He laundered millions through offshore art deals and backdoor crypto schemes, helping some of the worst people scrub their blood money clean. I'd followed every wire transfer, every whispered deal behind hotel doors. I'd sat in vans for hours, watching him from tinted windows while my phone buzzed with Clarissa's texts about dinner plans and broken light bulbs. And then, 6 months ago, without warning, she brought him home. "This is Reed," she'd said, all soft eyes and giddy nerves, like she'd struck gold. Soulmate. I nearly choked on my beer. Of all the people she could have fallen for, she picked my mark, my mission, my job. And then she invited him into my house, onto my couch, over my life, like it was some divine accident. I didn't tell her who he was. I couldn't. My cover mattered more than her comfort. And honestly, she never asked. She was too busy believing the version of me she'd created, a quiet guy with a government job and a boring briefcase life. Her husband, the invisible man, letting her believe that kept things cleaner. Now, thanks to her impulsive affair, things were moving faster than I ever expected. At 7:58 a.m., I pulled into the gravel lot of an unmarked warehouse just outside the city limits. Gray siding, no signage, a place designed to be forgotten. Rows of black SUVs lined the far side, already humming. Agent Rowan stood out front, leaning against one of them with a cigarette in his mouth and that usual smirk like he'd seen this movie before. "Morning, sunshine," he said as I stepped out. "Rough night." I didn't bother answering. Inside the warehouse, the temperature dropped a few degrees. Director Keller was already there, arms folded, glasses low on his nose, eyes sharper than a scalpel. No wasted movements. No small talk. A folding table was set up in the center, scattered with laptops, printed maps, and thick manila folders. Reed's life laid out in black and white. "You're sure about this?" Keller asked, looking up from a file. "She's your wife." "Was," I said. "She made her choice." He gave a small nod. No emotion, just acknowledgement. That was the thing about Keller. You could drop a bomb in his lap and he'd ask for detonation specs. Rowan slapped a file down in front of me. "Let's bury this bastard," he said, his grin all teeth. I didn't return it. This wasn't a game for me. Not anymore. We reviewed the plan one last time. Surveillance teams were already stationed around the house. At exactly 9 a.m., they'd move. Another unit would hit Reed's office downtown. Servers seized, accounts frozen. The evidence? Rock solid. Bank transfers. Wiretaps. A recorded call where Reed practically bragged about laundering money for a cartel proxy. This case wasn't just ready, it was airtight. Keller slid a headset across the table. "You're on comms. Eyes on the feed. If it goes sideways, you call the shots." I nodded, slipping it over my ear. The plastic clicked into place with a satisfying snap. Clarissa thought she was trading me in for a newer model. What she didn't know was her upgrade was about to go down in federal history, and I'd be the one flipping the switch. The van smelled like stale coffee, cold metal, and the tension of people who knew what was coming. We rolled out just before sunrise, tires humming over wet pavement. I sat in the back beside Rowan, headset in place, eyes fixed on the monitors glowing in front of us. Live feeds from every angle of the house I used to call home. Clarissa's car sat parked in the driveway. Reed's flashy BMW was right next to it, the hood still damp with dew. The windows were dark, curtains drawn. Quiet. The kind of quiet that comes right before everything goes loud. It was 8:55 a.m., 5 minutes until the knock. I adjusted my earpiece, listening to the soft chatter across channels. Agents confirming positions, checking gear, double-clicking comms. Calm, professional. Everyone knew the play. We'd done it before. But this time, it was personal. I kept my eyes on the porch, remembering the last time I stood there with my keys in hand, suitcase at my feet. How she smirked. How he spread out on my couch like a king claiming new land. They were probably still upstairs, tangled in bedsheets I'd paid for, asleep in the silence they mistook for safety. Let them sleep. The clock ticked to 9 a.m. The radio lit up. Alpha team in position. Beta site secured. Office lockdown complete. Awaiting green. I took a breath. Not deep. Just enough. Go, I said. Like clockwork, it began. On the feed, 3 black SUVs pulled up with silent precision. Tires barely screeched as doors swung open and agents poured out. Vests tight. Eyes sharp. Weapons low, but ready. 2 moved to the front door. 2 circled the back. One held the perimeter. Agent Torres, who I'd trained with back when I still had hair and hope, stepped up and knocked hard. FBI. Search warrant. Open the door. No response. Then the curtain shifted. Clarissa's face appeared in the window, sleepy, confused, hair a mess. She cracked the door open just enough for her voice to leak out. What's going on? Torres didn't miss a beat. FBI, ma'am. We have a warrant. Step aside. He moved in. The rest followed. I watched her stumble back, clutching the front of her robe like it was armor. Reed came barreling down the stairs seconds later, shirtless, wide-eyed. What the hell is this? He shouted. The second he saw the agents, the badge, the gear, his face drained. That smug grin. Gone. He bolted for the back door. Bad idea. 2 agents were already waiting. They tackled him before he made it 10 steps. The cuffs clicked into place, clean and final. Reed Vallon, you are under arrest. Charges include racketeering, fraud, and money laundering. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Clarissa? She broke. Her voice cracked through the feed, sharp and frantic. What is happening? What is this? She spun around the room, watching agents tear through drawers, lift couch cushions, bag electronics, unlock safes. Nobody answered her. We didn't have to. She dropped onto the couch, hands shaking, breath short. Her robe slipped off one shoulder, and she didn't even notice. She didn't get it yet, but she would. On screen 2, the office raid downtown was already wrapping. Reed's staff frozen at their desks while agents boxed up files and unplugged computers. Office secure, beta team reported. Evidence in hand. Moving to processing. I gave a nod. They couldn't see it, but they didn't need to. Back at the house, Agent Torres updated. Primary subject in custody. Secondary occupant detained for questioning. Secondary occupant. That was Clarissa. She sat there, frozen, whispering something I couldn't hear. Maybe a prayer. Maybe regret. But for me, it was just the sound of truth finally arriving. And the beginning of everything she never saw coming. Clarissa didn't cry at first. She just sat there, hands trembling, eyes darting around the wreckage of the living room, as agents moved through the house with cold precision. Every drawer opened, every laptop bagged, every surface turned over like it had secrets to confess. But when they cracked the safe in the bedroom, the one hidden behind the painting I'd hung years ago, and pulled out cash, burner phones, and documents, something shifted in her face. Shock gave way to disbelief, and disbelief turned to fear. That's not mine, she said, voice rising. I don't know where that came from. Maybe she didn't, but it didn't matter now. She'd let him in. She'd accepted the gifts, the weekends away, the villa she called a timeshare. She laughed when he handed her diamond bracelets. She bragged when he leased her a car in her name. And now? Now she was sitting on my couch, the same one he had his feet on just days ago, whispering, "This can't be happening." An agent, young guy, clean cut, stood over her, calm and steady, clipboard in hand. "Ma'am, we'll need you to come with us for questioning." Clarissa blinked at him like he'd spoken in a language she didn't recognize. "But I live here. This is my house." "Not anymore," I muttered under my breath, watching from the surveillance van. My voice didn't carry, but the words were only for me anyway. Reed was already in the back of an SUV, wrists cuffed, head down. His earlier defiance had evaporated. All that swagger had cracked under pressure the second he realized the weight of what we had on him. He wanted a lawyer. That was fine. He'd have plenty of time to talk. Clarissa, though, she was still playing catch-up, still trying to piece together the moment when her world flipped inside out. I watched as the agents led her toward a separate vehicle, not cuffed, but clearly not free. She turned back one last time, eyes wide, mouth slightly open like she wanted to scream or explain or run. She didn't do any of those things. She just looked lost. The feed went dark a few seconds later, the operation complete. Alpha Team, came the report through the comms, evidence secured. Subjects in transport. Rowan leaned back beside me, stretching with a yawn. "Well," he said, chewing gum like it was the punchline, "that was clean." I didn't respond, just stared at the now-blank monitor where Clarissa had been. She thought I was the one who didn't see her anymore. But the truth? She never saw me to begin with. She saw what she wanted, a safe man, a quiet man, someone who wouldn't make waves. She thought I'd fade into the background. She never imagined I was the storm coming. My phone started buzzing the second we pulled away from the house. Clarissa's name flashed across the screen, over and over. First a call, then a text, then another, then 5 more. I ignored all of them. The van rattled as we hit a stretch of uneven road, and Rowan glanced over with a smirk. She's freaking out, huh? Let her. I tossed the phone onto the seat beside me. It vibrated again, sliding a few inches across the vinyl. Another message. All caps. What did you do? No punctuation. Just panic. I leaned my head back, eyes closed for a moment. The kind of stillness that comes when everything you've planned finally lands. Clean. Precise. 3 years of surveillance. Of hiding what I did. Of pretending to be the man she thought I was. And now? She was staring down the fallout. I picked the phone back up, not to answer, but to scroll. Not to her message. To a photo. It was from months ago, taken during a late-night training op. I was suited up, headset, vest, gloves, standing next to Rowan in front of a bank of monitors. On one of the screens behind us, frozen mid-frame, was Clarissa. She was laughing in the image, smiling the way she did when she thought the world belonged to her. I sent her the photo. No caption. Let the silence speak. It took less than a minute for the next call to come through. This time, I answered. Yeah. She was breathless on the other end, like she'd run a marathon just to get to this moment. What the hell is that picture? What did you do? I didn't raise my voice. Didn't need to. You said no divorce papers were needed, I said. You were right. She started to reply, but I ended the call before the words could come out. Hung up clean. The line went dead. And with it, something else inside me did too. Rowan let out a low whistle, grinning. Cold. I didn't smile back. It wasn't about being cold. It was about being done. She'd had 17 years to ask who I really was. But she only cared once the walls came crashing down around her. Now she was screaming through glass, and I was already out the door. The warehouse was colder than usual. Concrete walls, metal tables, fluorescent lights that buzzed faintly, like they were tired of watching people lie for a living. I stood outside interrogation room 3, arms folded, eyes locked on the glass. Inside, Reed Vallon was already seated, wearing an orange jumpsuit that clashed perfectly with the slick image he used to sell. His hair was greasy, his confidence gone. Agent Torres sat across from him, calm as always, flipping through a file like it was light reading. You've got a lot to say, Reed, Torres said. Start talking. Reed leaned forward, eyes twitching toward the mirror, toward me, though he couldn't see me. I'll talk, he said quickly. Too quickly. But I need a deal. I'm not the big fish here. Of course not. They never are. Torres didn't blink. Talk first. Then we'll see. And Reed did. Desperation pouring out of him faster than strategy ever could. It's her, he said. Clarissa. She knew everything. She helped set up the accounts. Pushed for the villa. Told me we needed to make it look legitimate. I clenched my jaw, watching him spin it. He wasn't stupid. He was playing the only card he had left. Blame her. Misdirect. Buy time. He went on. She said the jewelry made her look respectable. That the car gave us cover. She was in deep, man. She picked the safe deposit box. She even picked the damn name for the shell company. Torres jotted something down, but didn't look impressed. We'll verify, he said flatly. I turned from the window, jaw tight. Clarissa wasn't clean. That much was true. She took the money. Lived in the luxury. Never once questioned where it came from. But did she know the mechanics? The layers? The federal weight behind what Reed was doing? No. She was a passenger who thought she was on a cruise ship, not a getaway car. Rowan met me halfway down the hall. He's panicking, tossing her under the bus before he even knows which wheels are moving. He thinks she's his shield. Yeah, and he's wrong. We walked back toward the main room, the evidence table stacked with files, hard drives, and a safe's worth of dirty money. Clarissa's name was on too much of it. Jewelry receipts, vehicle leases, travel docs tied to the Mykonos villa, probation at minimum. Prison wasn't off the table. My phone buzzed. Mike, my lawyer. She's asking to see you. Called the office from holding. Says it's urgent. I stared at the message for a long second. She was in a gray room now, under bright lights, probably hugging herself to stay warm. The shock would have worn off. Now came the fear. She's not your problem anymore, Mike added in a second text. And he was right. But part of me, maybe the part that remembered 17 years of laughter, dinners, and silence, answered anyway. Set it up. I'll go. The past wasn't finished talking yet, and I needed to hear how she thought it all unraveled. The conference room felt like a freezer. Stale carpet. Flickering overhead light. 2 chairs. 1 table. I sat on the far side, waiting. No file. No pen. Just silence and the hum of recycled air. The kind of stillness that presses on your ribs. The door opened. Clarissa stepped in, smaller than I remembered. Hair pulled back in a rush, sweatshirt wrinkled, eyes red and swollen. She looked like someone who'd been crying for hours and still had tears left to give. She froze when she saw me. Her mouth parted like she wanted to speak, but didn't know where to start. I motioned to the chair across from me. Sit. She did. Slow, careful, like the floor might collapse beneath her. They're saying I'm involved, she whispered. They're saying I knew. I didn't. I swear to God, I didn't know. I said nothing. She leaned forward, her hands gripping the edge of the table like it could anchor her. It was just gifts. He said he was doing well. I didn't ask questions. I should have, I know that now, but I didn't think it was this. I still didn't speak. I wanted to hear what she'd say when she had no idea what I was thinking. You did this, she said, voice cracking. The raid. The arrest. It was you. I nodded once. Yeah. Her eyes filled again, this time faster. Why didn't you tell me who you were? Why didn't you trust me? That one almost made me laugh. Almost. You never asked, I said. She blinked, stunned like the truth slapped harder than any lie could. You never asked. Never cared what I did after dark. Never wondered why my office door stayed locked. You wanted simple. Safe. Quiet. I thought you were an accountant, she whispered, as if the words still made sense. You thought wrong. Her lips trembled. You lied. No, I said evenly. I protected you. Until you let him in. She flinched. That one landed. I didn't know what he was, she said, barely audible. He was kind. He listened. You were always gone. Because I was doing a job that doesn't let you clock out. She stared at her hands. I thought he was my soulmate. And now you know he's not. Tears rolled down her cheeks, quiet and slow. She didn't bother wiping them. They're saying I could go to jail, she said. They found the villa, the car, the jewelry. I didn't know they were bought with. She stopped, swallowed hard. I thought he was generous. You thought he was giving you the life you deserved, I said. You didn't care how he paid for it. I'm sorry, she choked out. I was stupid. Angry. I said things I didn't mean. I didn't respond. Not yet. I didn't mean it when I told you to leave, she whispered. But you did. She looked up at me, eyes wide, wounded. Please help me. Tell them I didn't know. I did protect you, I said calm. But I can't lie for you. If you're clean, you'll walk. If not, I let the words trail off. The door opened behind her. An agent with a clipboard stepped in. Time's up. She looked at me like she wanted to beg, but her voice was gone. Just a hollow expression and a pair of trembling hands. As she stood, she reached out, just barely, fingers brushing the table like she might touch mine. Please, she said again. Don't let them take me. I didn't move. You made your choices, I said quietly. Now you live with them. She was let out without another word. And I sat in the silence she left behind, the chair across from me still warm. She'd spent 17 years living beside a stranger. Now, finally, she knew who I was. And I wasn't hers anymore. The warehouse was quieter now. The buzz of agents moving evidence had faded, leaving behind a low hum of printers, distant footsteps, and the clink of coffee mugs on metal desks. I stood in the briefing room alone, the whiteboard still smeared with Reed's name and a list of charges underneath it. Racketeering, fraud, conspiracy. I sipped a lukewarm coffee from a paper cup. It tasted like burnt paper, but it kept my hands busy. Clarissa hadn't called again. Not since the conference room. But I knew she would. She always circled back when things got real. Director Keller walked in, glasses sliding down his nose as he scanned the board. Press is on this, he said. Big names. Big money. Bureau's loving it. I nodded. They should. Fallon's done, he added. You got him good. We've got enough to bury him. And her. Keller sighed, rubbing his jaw. She's in holding. Claiming she didn't know. But her name's on too much. 140K in gifts. The villa. That damn car. She's tangled. But not criminal. We'll see. He paused, watching me over the rim of his glasses. You believe she knew? I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't have one. Because it wasn't simple. No, I said finally. Not the details. She thought Reed was just some rich guy who liked showing off. But she didn't ask questions. She didn't want to. And that was the truth that stung the most. Not the betrayal. Not even the affair. It was how easy it was for her to be blind. as long as the shine kept coming. My phone buzzed. Another message. Answer me. I didn't. Instead, I opened my camera roll again, staring at that same photo I'd sent her. Me in tactical gear, headset on, with Rowan in the background and Clarissa's face frozen on a monitor behind us. A still frame from a wiretap that changed everything. 17 years together, and this was the only time she'd ever really seen me. Rowan walked in a minute later, chewing gum, a new case file tucked under his arm. Media's blowing up. You're in 3 headlines already. I shrugged. No comment. Smart, he said, tossing the file onto the table. Let it fade. He leaned on the chair, watching me for a beat. She get the message? She's starting to. He grinned. You're colder than you used to be. I'm clearer. There was a difference. I watched the screen in front of me flicker, security footage looping through the house, agents bagging the life she'd built with a man she never really knew. And all I could think was, she tried to humiliate me. She thought I was just the guy who mowed the lawn late and forgot to buy milk. Now, she was sitting and holding, wearing yesterday's mascara, wondering how everything slipped through her fingers. No papers needed, just the truth. And I'd given it to her, wrapped in silence, delivered by force. The headlines didn't stop for a week. FBI sting uncovers billion-dollar laundering scheme. Financial powerhouse taken down by undercover operative, married to the mistress. He left without papers. Then came the arrests. They loved the irony, the twist, the betrayal wrapped in federal tape. Every news anchor had their version. Every blogger had a theory, but I didn't speak to any of them. No statements. No interviews. No op-eds explaining how a husband became the hand of justice. I let them talk while I moved on. A week after the takedown, Keller called me into his office. He didn't waste time. You're leading covert financial crimes now, he said. We need someone who can see the angles most people miss. Someone who's already lived it. I didn't ask for a raise. Didn't ask for applause. Just nodded, shook his hand, and walked out with a new badge clipped to my belt and a new stack of case files under my arm. The new office was smaller, tighter, quieter, but the work? It was already breathing beneath the surface. Shady crypto firms, insider deals disguised as crowdfunding, a new spider web, waiting for someone to pull the right thread. And I was ready to pull. I stayed busy. That was the point. Some days, I thought about Clarissa. Not for long. Just flashes. Her laugh echoing down the hall. The way she used to curl into me when the world felt heavy. I wondered if she'd been that version of herself with him. With Reed. Or if she just played a part until the money ran dry. Reed was locked away, already bargaining for a softer sentence. Clarissa? She cut a deal. Probation, forfeiture of assets, mandatory financial education classes. The villa was gone. So was the car. The jewelry. The fantasy. She moved into a 2-bedroom apartment uptown, according to the bureau file. Quiet place. No visitors. Just her and the echo of everything she'd thrown away. I hadn't heard from her in weeks. Until last night. A simple text. No punctuation. Can we talk? I stared at the screen for a long moment. No anger. No sadness. Just a quiet certainty. I deleted the message. No reply. No invitation. No return. That chapter wasn't open anymore. She made her choice when she unlocked the door and let him walk in. When she poured him wine in my glass. When she said I could leave, without a word, without a fight. Now, I had cases to run. A team to lead. A purpose she never cared to understand. And for the first time in 17 years, I didn't owe anyone an explanation. Especially not her. Some endings don't arrive with fanfare. They don't come with slammed doors or tearful goodbyes. No dramatic speeches. No last-minute apologies. Sometimes, they end with silence, and that silence is louder than any scream. It had been 3 months since the arrest. Since the sting. Since the truth burned through everything Clarissa thought was real. I hadn't seen her since that final meeting at the bureau. And I didn't plan to. I drove past our old house once, out of curiosity, not nostalgia. The lawn was overgrown. The porch light was off in the middle of the day. The windows were empty, like even the memories had packed up and left. For sale sign out front. Cheap listing price. She was long gone. I didn't stop. Just kept driving until the street disappeared in the rear view. People ask if I miss her. If I regret not trying to fix it. But what they don't understand is, there was nothing left to fix. What we had wasn't a foundation, it was a performance. A script we both kept reading from long after the meaning had dried up. And once the mask came off, there was no going back. I rebuilt quietly. New place. Smaller. No shared furniture. No familiar echoes in the hall. I kept my routine clean. Early mornings. Long runs. Coffee I made the way I like it. Strong and silent. I stopped checking my phone for her name. Stopped wondering if she'd call again. Because even if she did, I wouldn't answer. The scars were there, sure. But they weren't raw anymore. Just reminders. Of what I survived. Of who I became when the lies finally broke. Some stories end with wreckage. Mine ended with truth. And a clean break. So here's what I've learned. Sometimes the person you think knows you best is just someone who never looked close enough. Sometimes love isn't lost. It's unmasked. And when that happens, you don't chase it. You walk away. Quietly. Completely. And you never, ever look back. What loss made you stronger? Drop your wild story below and subscribe for more untamed tales right here on Wives Gone Wild.